Welcome again to another episode of The Discarded Compass, and my name is John Lynch and I'll be hosting the show tonight. And before we start, I just want to thank everybody for your kind support and your emails and your messages and your involvement on YouTube. Much appreciated. Keep it going and so we can keep going. Tonight we have Joan Tollifson. Joan's kindly agreed to do the show with us tonight, and Joan has a great, amazing story. I was reading some of it there. It's not easy reading, but it's great to see you alive, basically. Joan, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You're welcome, Joan. You know, your story, I was reading some of it. You had a tough time from the outset. You were being born. You had your challenges. And then you had addictions. Can you tell us a bit about your background, what it was like growing up and the challenges that you met?
Sure. Well, of course, this is a story, which abstracts a huge amount of infinite complexity into a coherent narrative. But during the time that I was in my mother's uterus, an amniotic band wrapped around my right arm and amputated my right hand and right forearm. So I was born without a right hand. And this was back, I was, born in the late 40s. So disability was not viewed the same way then that it is now. And especially for girls. And speaking of being a girl, I never really felt like I was a girl. I wanted to be a boy. So I now consider myself genderqueer, but I definitely didn't fit into, and of course back then in the 50s, gender roles were much more heavily defined. And then I came out in college as a lesbian. Again, this was before Stonewall and the gay liberation movement, so that was a big thing. And I started drinking and doing a lot of drugs at that time. And although I did a lot of drugs, including shooting heroin, I was never really addicted to drugs, but I was addicted to alcohol. Alcohol was kind of my thing. And I luckily, I nearly died from drinking and all that, and led a very wild life. But luckily I sobered up when I was 25. So the damage to my body was not as great as it might have been. And I sobered up through a very unconventional approach, not the AA or the 12-step approach. And initially after that, I got into politics, various forms of the women's movement, the gay liberation movement, the Central America Solidarity movement, the anti-imperialist left. I was just in a wide variety of political movements. And then I found my way eventually to the Zen Center, the San Francisco Zen Center, and then the Berkeley Zen Center. And then eventually I worked with Joko Beck, Charlotte Joko Beck. And then eventually I met Tony Packer, who I consider to be my main teacher, although I've been with many other teachers. But and Tony was a Zen teacher who had left she was supposed to take over the Rochester Zen Center, but she left because she decided that she couldn't really be part of the hierarchy and the dogma and the traditional aspects of Zen. And so she founded, along with her friends, as she called us, she never used the word students, but Tony and her friends founded the Springwater, what became the Springwater Center, which is where I ended up being on staff for 5 years and living there in Northwestern New York, where they still had silent retreats and silent sittings, but the schedule was optional. We had armchairs you could sit in as well as meditation cushions. It was very open and undogmatic, and Tony stressed that anything she said could be questioned. And so it was very unauthoritarian and open. And from there, I got into, I read Nisargadatta. I spent time with Jean Klein and a bunch of Advaita satsang teachers, including Gangaji was a major teacher. but also Francis Lucille and Isaac Shapiro. I went to a whole bunch of satsangs at that point. And then I encountered the radical non-duality, as I call it. I went on a little retreat with Tony Parsons. That was during the week of 9/11. That had a big impact on me, being with Tony Parsons. And so I had the two Tonys in my life, the Tony Packer and the Tony Parsons. and I was also by then holding meetings. And I had written my first book while I was on staff at Springwater. And since then I've written, well, altogether I've written 5 books. And now I live in Oregon, in Southern Oregon, after many years in the Bay Area and some years back in Chicago with my mother. And I had a very serious stage 3 cancer about 4 years ago that has, which I've been cancer free now for 4 years, but anyway, that has left me with a few additional quote unquote challenges. So that's my story in a nutshell. But you know, I feel like I've had a very blessed life. I mean, you know, I had wonderful parents and grew up in a beautiful place, and so overall, I've had an enormously lucky and blessed life, really.
Joan, that's quite a humbling, like a lucky life. People would say you had some of the hardest cards dealt.
Well, you know, well, first of all, I mean, a lot of things in my life, you know, I mean, we had enough money that there was always food on the table. We never, you know, my college education was paid for. You know, I've never gone hungry, even though I was panhandling for a while as a drunk, but I could always sort of fall back on my parents, you know, otherwise I probably would have been in jail. So, you know, and I'm white, I'm not, you know, I'm not, so I'm privileged in many ways and lucky in many ways. And even the things that were difficult, I see them as blessings because they've been the source of a lot of my deepest wisdom and insight. And I think that's true for many people. If we look back on our lives, that the things that seemed difficult or were difficult are often the things that really woke us up in some way and give us depth that we wouldn't otherwise have.
And that kind of goes with the saying that people seeking, you know, religion is for people who don't want to go to hell, and spirituality is for people who've been there. It's a bit like that, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that saying. I'm just wondering, there must have been some sort of heavy conditioning, patterns, beliefs, structures. You mentioned beliefs, and freedom from belief is a lot of your teaching, I think. And that actually, I totally agree with that. Belief can be quite dangerous. Yeah. And there must have been some sort of divine intervention in some way. You mentioned Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. Was there a moment of something usually happens where it's like, you know, this is against my beliefs, this is something new, yet there's something familiar?
Well, you know, my parents were atheist agnostics, so I wasn't raised in a religion. But I had I would say a spiritual sense from really early. I mean, I had a sense of the sort of wonder of life and the beauty of life, and I had a sense of the depth of whatever was going on here. I mean, I had what I would call a spiritual sensibility. And actually my parents did too, even though they weren't into organized religion and didn't talk about it that way. But my mother would say things like, God is love, you know, and my father would say there is no God. And he talked about determinism. He was a determinist. So he told me there was no free will, no choice. And it made total sense to me. So I got that message very early on. But I was never indoctrinated with religious beliefs, I got very interested in religion as a young person. So from probably, I don't know, early on, I was reading books about religion, and my parents would take me to, to different temples and churches and wherever I wanted to go. And I was really drawn to Buddhism for some reason when I read about it. But this was, the 50s and the early 60s. I didn't know any Buddhists. I didn't think there were any in my part of the world. So, but then when I got to college, Alan Watts was coming out with his books at that point. So I read Alan Watts, and I took a course on Vedanta and Zen, and there was a little Zen group at the college that I started sitting Zen meditation. And but then I veered off into alcohol, drugs, and then politics. So I took kind of a detour for a while. But I would say the interest in spirituality, religion, whatever was there in me, religion in the good sense, not in the dogmatic sense, was there in me from very, very early on. It was just, I kind of felt like even as a child, this is going to be my vocation. This is the center of my life.
And you mentioned Advaita. Like, if anyone meets Advaita, some people get an allergic reaction to the message because it's so radical, and it's unforgiving. When you met that message, what happened? Non-duality Advaita.
Well, first of all, it wasn't really. I mean, I don't think there's differences in expression in Zen and then Tony Packer and Advaita, but there's a great deal of similarity, really. So it wasn't, and even Christianity, mystical Christianity. And so, I mean, so I didn't feel like I was encountering something, completely different and new. I mean, Tony Packer would read from the Sargadatta at the end of her retreats. I mean, actually, I was the one that turned around into Sargadatta, but once she started reading I Am That, she would read from it at the end of her retreats, along with reading from Krishnamurti and Rilke and various other people on the last day. But anyway, so I found Sargadatta because somebody who was a guest at Springwater was reading I Am That, and gave me the book, and I started reading it, and I was just, wow, this is amazing. And then that same person told me about Jean Klein and made me promise that when I was back in California, I would go see Jean Klein. And I didn't really want to the night that he was there. I was like, oh, but I promised, so I will. So I went, and then I was just deeply, I mean, it was like, wow, when I heard Jean. And I just went back again and again and went on some retreats with him and everything. So that was really kind of the introduction to Advaita. And then Gangaji was just starting her teaching career at that time. And somebody gave me a tape of Gangaji. It was probably one of her very first satsangs. And it was like, and it was so different from Zen and Springwater. I mean, it was like, in fact, there was one tape where she was in India giving satsang, and there were like a rock band going by, and, monkeys and all kinds of chaos in the background. I was used to these very silent retreats, and here was this whole thing happening in the middle of total chaos. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. So I got involved with her, and so I think it was all kind of an unfolding stream, from Zen, Tony Packer, Advaita. And of course, there's all these different flavors of Advaita. I mean, all the different Advaita teachers I was with have a different flavor. And then the sort of what I call the radical non-dualists, like Tony Parsons, they have a different flavor, but to me, it's kind of like there's a different emphasis, like everybody's kind of emphasizing a different facet of this reality, or talking about it in a sort of different way, formulating it in a sort of different way. But in some way, I feel like it's all pointing to, in some way, kind of seeing through or waking up from the unnecessary suffering that comes from our false beliefs and ideas and thoughts, and discovering the aliveness or the spaciousness or the okayness or the isness or the simplicity of just this, and people language that in different ways and emphasize different aspects of it, but it kind of feels like it's, to me, I don't feel a big contradiction between all these things that can sound very different.
And that's the crux of the matter. How do you use the mind to drop the mind? Tell us.
Well, I don't know that you use, I mean, first of all, the word mind people mean different things by that. So some people mean by that thinking. And some people mean by the mind, they mean consciousness, kind of. So,
well, what is mind? I mean, we all talk that we have a mind. We all say that we have a mind. So maybe just start there. What is the mind to you, Joan? Or the idea?
Well, I don't know. I might use the word in different ways, in different sense. It's a word I'm careful with, just because people do mean such different things by it. And that's part of how we get mixed up, is that we have all these words like awareness and the mind and consciousness, and they're not as clear cut as words like table and chair in terms of what they're referring to. So people can use them a little differently. But anyway, how do we wake up from the mind? Well, I don't know that we wake up with the mind, from the mind. Feels to me like the main thing is seeing what the thinking mind is doing, which I would say is awareness. Seeing. Awareness sheds light on everything. Awareness sees, reveals what the thinking mind is doing. So we begin to see the ways that we create unnecessary suffering in the ways that we're thinking about things. And it's not just thought, of course, it's also, like, for example, with physical pain, I noticed in Zen, when we had to sit through a lot of pain, that when I was resisting it, when I was tightening the body against it, and when there were thoughts like, I can't stand this, when is the bell going to ring? This is horrible, it's going to kill me. It would get worse and worse and worse and seem unbearable. And when I could let go of all that and kind of open and relax the body and go right into the pain with awareness, with attention, and just really feel it as pure sensation, it would become interesting and would kind of go away and come back and would no longer be overwhelming. So it's not just thinking, it's also somatic in some way, but it's all has to do with awareness, I would say, in the sense of seeing all that and feeling all that and becoming sensitive to all that. And at the same time, kind of, instead of thinking about what's going on here, it's more about, I like to say, coming to our senses, and really seeing what's going on here. So in, paying attention to our direct experiencing rather than to our ideas about this. And when we pay attention to our direct experiencing, we notice that it's not the way we think it is. And so that to me is sort of a meditative exploration, a process of meditative exploration that we begin to notice things like that everything is appearing in this consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Everything is appearing in this, in me in a way, instead of me. I'm appearing in this field that I am, and then we start to notice that there's no boundary between the field and the awareness of the field, and it's one whole happening. And we hear the radical pointers that there's no way not to be this, there's just this. And there's nobody, the one who thinks they're not there yet is just a thought, an image. And so, there's different kind of pointers and teachings, or whatever you want to call them, messages along the way that you get, that all reveal some aspect of this, or help you to see through some piece of the delusion. And so I think it's all kind of, in one way or another, that's kind of what it's all about. Although some people wouldn't describe it that way, I'm sure.
Yeah, and Tony Parsons springs to mind, because Tony's all about, there's just this happening for no one.
Yeah.
That sort of a message. And it's like, well, I know there's just this. There's always been this. life, if you like, you know. But there's a big difference between this, for this that you can't put words on. That it's even the mind or the thinking process, the belief structure, even if you give it your nothing, it'll come up with a mental nothing, won't it? I mean, the mind, the thinking process is quite trippy, quite baffling, cunning and baffling, isn't it, Joan? I mean,
Yeah.
it'll always have a position. Even a non-position is a position.
Yeah, that's what it does. I mean, which is functional in everyday life. I mean, you know, you got to know where you live and which mouth to put the food in and all that. So it's, you know, it's helpful on that survival level, but it gets us into a lot of trouble when it carries over into aspects of life where it doesn't really work very well. And when it's trying to sort out the nature of reality, it definitely doesn't work very well because, you know, as you're saying, we can sort of see through some of our more conventional beliefs, and then we can pick up subtle new beliefs. And the mind can kind of turn anything into a new formula, including, you know, there's just this, you know, because the words aren't it. I mean, what's being pointed to there's just this is like, there's just this right now, right here, just this, you know, and, but the mind is like, well, what does she mean? Does she mean this, or does she mean that, or, you know, and immediately, as soon as the thinking mind is doing that, it's creating this kind of sense that there's me here who lacks something and has to get something and is trying to figure this out. And if only I can figure out what just this is, then I'll be okay. You know,
we're supposed to be clever, like.
Yeah, and of course that completely misses the point, you know. But that's what the thinking mind does until it doesn't, you know, and you can't kind of make it doesn't.
How is that loop seen through? For me, it's a loop. For me, it's a loop, I think. Is it a moment of grace, of inevitability, or of a predestination? Why is it?
Well, again, you know, anything we say in answer to that is another idea. You know, it's this or it's that. And I think clearly different people have different experiences. I mean, some people seem to have these very sudden, dramatic, line in the sand kind of awakening moments, like Eckhart Tolle or something. And other people, like myself, it's been a much more gradual. I mean, you could say it's both gradual and right now. I mean, you can't, it's both, but I mean, it's been gradual in the sense that I can't pinpoint any moment when I suddenly, you know, had this enormous breakthrough and, you know, like a line in the sand where my life was one way before and totally different forever after. Yeah. So, and I think a lot of these things, you know, I often give the example of the first time I did an all-day sitting at the San Francisco Zen Center, and we were just sitting there in silence all day. And when you just sit there with nothing to do, but just sit there, you start to notice what's going on. And one of the things that I noticed, and it was one of the light bulb moments in my life, one of the things I noticed was that every thought I was having was about the future. You know, I was thinking about when I could go to my next one-day sitting and where I would park the car the next day at work and what I was going to do on the break that was coming up. And, you know, and I'm sure I'd been doing that for years, but without knowing it, without seeing it, without being aware of it. You know, it had just been sort of happening in the background. And all of a sudden it was like the light turned on and I saw it. I saw this pattern. And it didn't end then forever after. But from that moment on, I would see it, you know, and sometimes I would see it after I was far into it. And sometimes I would catch it right at the beginning, but I was seeing it more and more. And I started seeing how alluring it was and seeing how there was suffering in it and just seeing it. And I couldn't, like, you can't just decide, well, okay, this is not good, I'll just never do this again. I mean, that doesn't work. And it's just another thought about the future. So it was just seeing it, and then eventually it seemed to dissolve, not in a big flash moment, but just at some point I noticed I wasn't really doing that anymore. And similarly, it was when I did my first retreat with Toni Packer, and she points a lot to how, invites people to look for this me that we think is making our decisions and authoring our thoughts, just sort of look for it, see if you can find it. What is it? And it was on that retreat, again, another light bulb moment where, I really got that, oh, there is no me. It's just thoughts and mental images and memories. And, but it wasn't like, okay, from that moment on, there was never any sense of me again, or, I never again had any sort of, me-centered things going on, like seeking or being defensive or whatever it might be. But from then on, I think it was seen again in a new way. Like I would catch it in a different way, like noticing, oh, I'm being really defensive right now. What am I defending? Because Toni was always saying, if you're defensive, what are you defending? What is it? Find it. What are you defending? And it was very much a process of investigation with her and looking into all these things. She didn't say, she used a lot of questions instead of, here's the answer. It was like, look and see, what is this? And so it was just seen more and more clearly that there really isn't a separate, solid, persisting me here. But it can still seem like there is sometimes, there can still be if I feel defensive or hurt or something, well, there's a sense of me being threatened or something that rises up. So, and to me, that's not a problem. There was a point where that was a problem. It felt like, and this is, I think, common on the spiritual path, that you feel like you see that, and then it's like, oh, I have to get rid of that. That's the whole idea here, is to, vanquish the ego and have no sense of self. And, but now I just see that this is just one more thing that's going on in the play, in the movie of waking life. It's just one more. And yeah, there's an interest in seeing it, like, because, I'd rather not operate out of defensiveness or other egoic things. But it's not like I feel like it's a personal problem that needs to be solved or something, that it's unenlightened. Oh, I keep getting this message on my screen about sign into podcasts. Hold on, I have to get rid of it. It's a new Apple nightmare.
Yeah.
It keeps coming up. Let me see.
They're like thoughts. Yeah.
Oh, it's just going to be here. Let me try to move the thing. Maybe I can do that. There I go. I thought I got rid of it last night, but I guess I didn't. Anyway. Another interesting development in the movie of Waking Life.
It's a bit like kind of reminding me that the freedom is sort of embracing or trying to get enlightenment is sort of like a hopeless pursuit, but it has to be an endeavor that has to be tried. And then there's freedom in that hopelessness, it seems like that's just what goes on here anyway. But there's no way to get this, is there? There's no way to get anything out of this. There's a booby prize. Enlightenment is the booby prize, if there is one.
Well, it's like, what we're trying to get, in a sense, is just being at peace with what is, feeling okay, feeling at peace with what is, really, somehow. And it's like what we're seeking is already here. It's, this is never absent. This aware presence is always here. So it seems to me that it's really about seeing through what seems to be in the way, seeing through the thought, story, mirage of separation and encapsulation all of that. And I think for most of us, that doesn't happen in one big dramatic flash. It happens, gradually, and maybe never permanently, for all time. But so it's really, to me, it's about now, right now, which is all there ever really is. And even and then you sort of begin to realize that even the things that seem to be obstructions are themselves, they're not really obstructions. They're not really problems. They too are just this isness, this presence doing what it does. So, and that, I think that's the beauty of these kind of radical messages like Tony Parsons and his unofficial lineage, that it's kind of like seeing through that whole thought, feeling, sense that something has to happen, that I'm not okay, that I need to get something. This isn't it. Just seeing through that and recognizing that nothing is really in the way. The thinking mind will endlessly say that, the Apple podcast pop-up is in the way of this interview. And, and my defensiveness is in the way of my enlightenment and blah, 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 but you just see that that's all just a story. That's all just part of the movie. And it just passes, it's just gone in a moment. It's like these thoughts, like, I shouldn't have done that. When you have a thought, like I think no self is so ordinary. It's like on any ordinary day, we're just doing what we're doing, driving the car or whatever. And there's no self there until you get a thought like, am I enlightened yet? Or, and then all of a sudden there seems to be me and enlightenment and, but the thought is just a little blip of energy, really. It's really, what is a thought? I mean, it's just, there's nothing to it. It's just sort of, it's there and it's gone. But of course, we have this way of holding on to thoughts and, really getting involved in them.
Even if we look at the actual structure of a thought, we can't find what the structure is. We can't find how it was manufactured. We can't find where it came from. We can think various things, concepts and ideas about it, but right there, right then, we can't decipher anything about it, can we really?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just this kind of weird little mental that goes through, and we think that we're authoring our thoughts, that we're the thinker of our thoughts. But when you look for the thinker, you can't find anything. And when you just pay attention, you just see that these thoughts are just popping up. Like, you don't know what your next thought is going to be. And they're just like one Zen teacher years ago you probably don't even, compared them to the bubble. There used to be this Lawrence Welk show on TV, and these bubbles would come out. They're like the bubbles coming out of the Lawrence Welk, which nobody will know. That reference is way too old. I take that one back.
It's there's so many there are so many failures in the idea of the person, because obviously there isn't really, it's just a supposition, yet it causes a lot of suffering.
Well, I think clearly there's something here that we call Joan and something we call John.
Yeah. So reference to the body, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I find some of it, when certain people just keep saying over and over, there's no person, there's no person, there's no person, I sort of feel like, well, wait a minute. Because, there is something that we call Joan and something we call John. But just in the same way that there's something we call Chicago and something we call London and something we call San Francisco. But when you really start to look at any of those things closely, you can't really pin down what they are. I mean, you can't deny that there's something we call San Francisco. and that it has a unique flavor and that's different from Chicago, but you can't really get hold of what it is either. I mean,
and what about identification with the body, Joan? Because what can be done about that? It seems so automatic, and we're so used to this is my body. How can that be seen through?
well, I mean, there's a certain reality to it. Like, there is, I don't particularly resonate with the I am not the body pointer. I like to say I am not only the body. I am not encapsulated inside the body. There's no me inside the body. But obviously, if you stab me with a knife, there's going to be pain here. This body feels the pain of this. There's a consciousness that is in some way connected to or associated with this body that I think is part of life. That we have a functional sense of boundaries. It's not okay for anyone to just walk up to me on the street and start groping me all over or something. We have a functional sense of boundaries, and we have a, so some identification with the body is a functional part of being alive, I think. The problem comes when we think, I am only the body. That's what I am. I am this little me inside the body. And I am encapsulated in here, and I'm separate from everything else. That's the problem. And, even the body, as I was talking about how we can't deny the existence of John and Joan and San Francisco and Chicago. When we really explore what the body is, it's nothing solid. It's nothing you can really get hold of.
Scientists say this.
Scientists say this, but meditators also. If you just close your eyes and feel into the body, there's nothing. You can't even find parts of it. It's just vibrations and tinglings, and of course.
We walk around thinking, this is a table, this is a chair. We give everything labels. Okay, that's fine. But in the background, somewhere in CERN, you got the greatest minds in the world haven't found how all this happens. They have not found the secret to this. Now, people, there's a big there's a gap between Joe Soap thinking, your man on this non-dual expedition, thinking he's nobody, he's a bit cracked. But people forget that the greatest minds in the world haven't cracked the secret of life. And a lot of them actually, I don't know, is it fact? Probably is, that 99% of everything is 99.999% is empty space.
Empty space, and dark matter and all these things that, the table, I mean, scientifically, they know that the table isn't really solid. It feels solid because of, magnetic poles or something like that. It's an illusion, kind of. I mean, science knows that what we're seeing is not some external reality, that this is some sort of creation that consciousness cooks up. So, I mean, of course, just reading that in a physics book or something, or hearing that from a scientific perspective, doesn't necessarily change our life. Which is where I think spiritual, I don't really like the word practice because it sounds too methodical, but that's where I think, spirituality or non-duality in whatever form, whether it's meditation or going to, Tony Parsons talks, but some kind of actual sort of direct seeing is important, because and you can really discover this by just being present and seeing that that nothing is solid in the way that you think it is, that the body isn't solid, and that you can't find the little me who's supposedly in there. And that when you look deeply into what you mean by me, it's really just this aware presence, this beingness, this. You can't really find anything else. you sort of
effortless, this, isn't it? It's effortless.
Yeah, and it's all just happening. Even apparent effort, apparent willful effort, apparent planned action, all of that is also just happening, in the sense that what moves us to make a plan of some kind, and how does that planning unfold? All of that is just happening spontaneously, really, by itself. And you can discover that by really watching as all of these things happen and seeing that.
And it's interesting, the spontaneity of the whole thing. I was listening to someone else, like, what was it the other night? Carl Renz, I think he had quite an interesting take on the whole thing, which I can't really understand too well, but it was a bit like that presence, that power, dreamt all this up.
Mm-hmm.
And that power itself can't control anything either. That's
right.
a scary thought.
I love that about Carl. I really love Carl Renz.
He's great. I really enjoy him, Joan. Yeah,
he's really great. And
you got to be boiled in oil to listen to him. I mean, he's not for the spiritual bypass or know it all. Like, he's for.
No, he's definitely because he kind of he offends a lot of people, and he just kind of, as he says, he's a rug puller. He pulls the rug out from under everything, and anything you try to make into something, he like whoosh, get rid of that, and
duck shooter.
But he's but yeah, he talks about how the almighty self, or how this is my wording, it might not be his exactly, but the gist of it being something like the almighty self.
I think he's a great memory. He'd probably have you for that, because he's got a great memory about what he hasn't said. Well,
something about the almighty self is totally helpless. It just keeps stepping in the shit again and again and again. It can't help itself, and I love that, because
that is some, like, we talk, sorry for it, but we talk about freedom. I want to be free. Hold on a minute, folks. This is dangerous stuff. I only get a sense of it, from a sense of it only. But that absolute freedom is terrifying to the person. It has to be a death, because there's no hanging on in there, is there? Like,
no, although paradoxically, I mean, it doesn't negate the fact that we may be moved by life itself to do various things. Like, if you're experiencing severe depression, you may be moved to see a therapist or take a medication or whatever, or if you're dying of alcohol abuse, you may be moved to see a therapist or go into a recovery program, that all is included. I mean, that's like also just happening. So it doesn't, it's easy to sort of misinterpret these radical non-dual messages as meaning that you shouldn't be doing anything like that, because there's no you to do it, and there's no choice. But that leaves you out of the picture in some way, because it's like everything that, like, deciding to have this conversation with each other. It appears to be a decision you made and I agreed to, but if you really watch, it all just happened spontaneously. How you noticed me and how you decided, you had the urge, I think I'll, and why I responded as I did, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, but it's not like, well, we shouldn't talk to each other because there's no one to do that. I mean, you could sort of, so it's paradoxical. I mean, I think it's all very paradoxical. You can't really get hold of it with any of these formulations, really.
And isn't it just as well that you can't get hold of it? Because wouldn't it be terrible if we did? What would we do if we could capture enlightenment and we got a medal, or what would it be? I've no idea what enlightenment would be anyway.
Well, that is what our thinking mind is always capturing things, or trying to, or thinking it has, and we see the result of that. It's causes a lot of stress and conflict, and as soon as you think I'm enlightened now, you're almost inevitably in for a serious disappointment. And having
it's quite funny. It's like, really? Okay. What's it like? How's it going for you?
Yeah. And we have all these ideas about enlightened people. And it's crazy because the whole, so-called enlightenment, part of it is seeing that there isn't any solid, persisting, continuous person anyway. So, or any solid, persisting state of mind either. I mean, we could say that here now is always here, or this, whatever this all is, it's always here. But any kind of experiential state of consciousness, any experience is not permanent. And so the whole notion of there being an enlightened person, in the sense that that's often spoken of, is like some person who's always completely without self, completely open and spacious, totally kind and generous. Never has a moment of feeling defensive or insulted or hurt or angry or abandoned or anything like that. Just totally, what are we talking about? I mean, it's crazy. And then these people personally, and you can see that people have human emotions, and maybe there's the rare, who knows? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are people who never have a bad moment, but I haven't met them.
Well, I'm not one of them anyway, that's for sure.
I'm certainly not one of them.
Listening to you talk there, it seems like on the path, people set out to get something, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But through all these teachings and the gurus as such and the teachers, there comes a time where it seems, for me anyway, it just seems this way, because I see a lot of it, that the teaching turns and it's like, oh, I'm not going to get anything here. I get it. Oh, okay. This is about dropping ideas and there's nothing to get. Where am I now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really more about seeing through the false.
The false, yeah.
Seeing through delusion. And in my view, it's not seeing through it once and for all, but seeing through it now, whenever it shows up, just seeing through the false and recognizing that what is, at least in terms of its experiential expression, is going to be ever changing. It's not going to ever be endlessly sunny days with no difficult weather. That's just not the way it works.
Yeah, and like the life force is here in this body, yet there's a thought, I might not finish this interview. The body could drop during the interview too.
It could, yeah.
We really don't know.
That would be quite an interview if you or the guest actually died during the interview.
Well, especially if I was laughing. I'd like to go laughing, actually. Yeah. Well, that's the end.
That would be a really good one.
But who's going to edit my... and if it really happened now, that would be even worse.
Yeah.
There's a sense of that, we don't know the time. And getting back to Carl Renz, he reckons, there's a predetermined time, there's a time and that's it. The body will go. There's a second in supposed time where our time is up as such. And nobody knows when that is, our final breath, I'm not being morbid here. I'm just trying to, it's part and parcel. Actually, Joan, that's part of it too. It's like you can't talk about death, can you?
No, well, my last book was called Death, the End of Self-Improvement.
Sorry, what was that?
My last book was called Death, The
Yeah.
End of Self-Improvement.
The end of self-improvement. Okay. That's it. That's the
Yeah.
final teaching.
Yeah. And death, yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't talk about death a lot, or we talk about it more than we did when I was little, but
Mm.
it's still, um, yeah, I don't know. But we don't know. We never know. I mean, I've known people who died suddenly, they were just there, they were, and all of a sudden, massive heart attack, and 2 seconds later, they're gone, or a car accident, and 1 second later, they're gone. Um, and then other people die these very slow uh, deaths with many, many losses beforehand. And, there's no way to know what's going to happen. And on the level of the person, that's scary. It's kind of like, I'm speaking personally, I'm not afraid of death per se, but I'm definitely, if I think about it, I can get afraid of the things that might happen before death,
Yeah.
But only if I think about it, which is, one of the things that can be noticed, um, that I don't really know what's going to happen, and whatever happens, it's not going to be the way I thought it would be.
Yeah. And when death, sorry, I've had a moment, all right, but it's like when it's coming, it's there's total acceptance because you can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
what can you do? It's going to happen, and that's it. It's yeah, what is life about? I'm getting sort of really philosophical now about things because I've had my moments and stuff, but I don't go into my story too much. But you know, I do think myself when you unhook from them old belief patterns and that old constructs, that false sense of self, I kind of think there's an authenticity there, like there's an automatic programming that's there that can sort of live through then. Would you agree with that? Would that be sort of?
Well, I think that's always what's living, really. I mean, we just think that there's me in here kind of doing it all, but it's all happening always by itself. And when that sense that, it's very freeing to recognize that there's no me doing it, because then it's like if I'm facing some big decision, what do I do about this? There's a recognition that I'm just, in a way, I'm just waiting to see what I do. I'm waiting to find out what I do, rather than I have to figure this out, and I could get it wrong and really ruin everything. It's very relaxing. It's kind of takes that whole pressure off.
Yeah, I've moments like that. It's like I can park issues, some decision that has to be made. Say it was financial the other day, and I left it alone, and it actually was resolved with just one text.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see it at the time, it was quite something. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, well, you didn't see it because that was, whatever, but it was seen, but there would have been a lot of a story around that before. There would have been a story, like, yeah.
And even if that comes back sometimes, even if one does get caught up in worrying or something, or, whatever, that too is just what's happening. It's just what's showing up. It's just, it's just weather. I like to say it's just weather. It's no different than the supposedly outside weather. It's just weather. And, but the problem comes in taking it personally, in the sense that, this is my weather. It's the wrong weather. It means something about me. This kind of weather means that I'm not enlightened yet, or I'm a hopeless case, and I have to get rid of this weather and get other weather. But really, it's just weather.
Yeah.
And it goes on its own.
Is there any benefit, bonus to seeing through this? Really, though?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, this again gets very paradoxical, because if we're meditating or going to Tony Parsons meetings or whatever it is with the idea that we're going to get something, that there's going to be a benefit, that's the very thing that kind of gets in the way. But on the other hand, when as we've just been saying, when this stuff falls away, more or less, when it falls away to some extent or completely or whatever, there's not as much suffering. There's not, life is easier. There's still pain, there's still physical pain, there's still painful circumstances like wars and bankruptcies and racism and sexism. There's still painful things that happen, but the suffering is the overlay we put on them and the way we come at them, sort of, and that can disappear. So it doesn't mean you don't still get cancer or something, but and it doesn't mean that the treatment still doesn't hurt. Mm-hmm. but you don't suffer over it in the same way. So yeah, there is in a way a benefit, even though it's taboo to say that in certain circles, and it's taboo for a good reason, which is that if we take all this up with, that's kind of the essence of our problem, is that we keep thinking that something needs to happen, something better needs to happen. I'm not, there's this sense that I am somehow fundamentally deficient and lacking, and something better needs to happen. I need to be better. And so, and of course, that is very often why we take up a spiritual practice, or why we go to meetings with someone like Tony Parsons.
So I'm just getting sort of you get the path of Buddhism where, there's reincarnation. So that would be a benefit if you're going to reincarnate.
Well, just to clarify, I don't think, who knows what the Buddha really said, but it seems to me that reincarnation completely contradicts his actual essential message. Yeah. And a lot of Buddhist schools do not believe in reincarnation, but some do anyway. I just had to say that because. Yeah,
sure. That's important. Yeah. So like what I'm thinking is, you say you got Joe and Mike. Joe is a bank robber, Mike is a saint. They both die. Life leaves both their bodies, and that's it. There's no benefit or
in that sense,
error to any of them, is there?
No, because
that's a very cool way of trying to explain it, but I can't explain it right. But
yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I personally don't think that there's that there's any me who survives death. I think this whole whatever it is unborn and undying, and is the manifestation is dying moment by moment, second by second. It's total impermanence. But I don't expect that, to me, I imagine dying will be just like going to sleep at night. I'm not expecting that Joan is going to be, I might be surprised. Maybe I will be whirling down a, long dark tunnel or find myself at the pearly gates or in hell or something, but that's not what I'm imagining. And of course, no one really knows. Even these people who've had near-death experiences, they were near death. They weren't death, they're not dead. So, we don't really know what happens after death. We all have different ideas, but yeah, I don't think there's any benefit to anything we do in terms of, me in some continuing way or something, it's like.
Yet there's still what I think, consciousness, that power just cannot help but love to be, and it cannot help but inquire into itself. Like it's terrible news for that power. Just wants to, it'll never know what it is. It's quite astounding.
Well, it seems to be in the nature of whatever this is, to be interested in itself, and to be interested in healing itself in some way. It seems to have an interest in evolving and changing and healing. From the level of the white blood cells battling an infection in the body to meditation groups and recovery groups and therapy and everything else, medicine and surgeries and all the things we have it seems that there's just kind of a natural inclination to want to feel better, and there's some way in which we're just naturally interested in improving. And the problem, there's nothing wrong with getting better at your tennis game or something, or recovering from cancer. The problem comes when we feel like, we have to do that to be happy. Like, we have to recover from cancer, or we have to get better at our tennis game, or whatever. And we take it personally, and we feel like everything depends on it. Then that's suffering. But there's nothing wrong with getting better at something. And there's also nothing fundamentally right about it either. I mean, it just kind of is what is.
Yeah.
And certainly all the ways in which we don't get better, all the ways in which we get worse, which happen more and more as you get old. And you start, things start falling apart more and more. That too is part of the dance. It's a part of this whole happening, and it's, again, the only problem is if you think this shouldn't be happening to me,
And it's like just for sport, isn't it? The whole thing. And I know there's wars and stuff going on now as well. I don't mean that. I'm very conscious there's suffering in the world, I am. But it's like, it's just, it plays out just because that's life. I mean, there's no, that's freedom again comes up. The word freedom is coming up again,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's again, it's so subtle because I mean, there is obviously tremendous pain and painful things that are happening in this world, and that have happened throughout history. And a lot of it certainly happens because of our human delusions. I mean, there's a lot of pain just amongst other animals, just ripping each other apart for dinner and stuff like that. But humans have a particular kind of pain that we can get into over when we're identifying with me, or with my nation, or with my boundaries, or whatever it is. And but I'm personally not a believer in some sort of future utopia or something. I mean, I just don't see that happening. It seems to me that part of the nature of this manifestation is that it can't show up without polarities, without dualism in some sense. I mean, it's like you can't have up without down. And we might get rid of one particular problem. Like maybe we'll eventually get to a place, if we survive long enough, where there's no longer any racism, for example, but there'll be something else. It's never going to be like, because we all have our own, every one of us is like watching a different movie. And so no two of us see the same thing. Your impression of this meeting and mine, we're each in a different movie, I mean, quite literally, like what's on my screen is different than what's on your screen, and how we interpret it is filtered through all of our lifelong conditioning, etc. So it's like, of course, no two people agree on what the world should be like. If it could be just the way, it would be perfect. No two people would create the same exact world. So,
and that's the problem we have, don't we? I mean, it's already so. It's been like this for forever.
Yes. I mean, the period when Zen was coming into existence in China was apparently a period when something like 2/3 of the population died of famine, war, plague. It's just that's been there all through. We've lived, my lifetime has been in this sort of little bubble of relative comfort in the human world, in the part of the world I was living in. I mean, we had food and heat in the winter, and
we live like kings and queens, don't we? Like, I mean, really, like, we've got technology, and we got robots doing things for us. It's Yeah, we live in a good time, in terrible times. But then again, the duality you speak of is there, and it seems it always will be there. And you know, and that's where we need to look at, probably, well, for anyone that's suffering. I always like to try and help people out there, because it's, you know, it's just, that's life wants to do that somehow, you know. And that bondage, that thinking pattern, to that thought process, if it's seen, then it can't be who you are, you know. That's basically a powerful message that I heard early on, you know. That can free up a lot of people. Yeah, and what's wrong with not suffering? I mean, no one wants to suffer.
Well, there's a wonderful quote by Mark Twain that I often quote, which is, "I've been through some terrible things in my life, and some of them actually happened."
That's very good.
And that kind of sums it up, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah. False
like,
evidence appearing real is a lot of it. Yeah.
yeah, you know, like in my mind, I've been through dementia and having a stroke and blah, 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 blah. But so far, none of that. Well, I am getting a little demented, I think, but so far.
Well, you're doing fairly well tonight, fair
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, I passed the cognitive tests still, but you know, things are falling out of the mind more and more, I notice. But like right now, I just completely lost my train of thought.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's not much happening here either, so makes one of us.
Yeah.
Or you can't have one. Yeah, that's the thing. There isn't even one, is there? I mean, yeah.
No, as soon as you get the idea of one, then you've automatically got two, you know, sort of in,
Yeah.
you know, it's almost like, yeah, no way that you put this into words can work. So it's kind of like what all these teachings do is to sort of like pull the rug out from under one after another. You know, one Zen teacher that I spent some time with described it like, he was talking about the different, you know, how we go from how Zen has evolved in different ways, but it could also be how an individual person goes from one teaching to another or something. You know, it's kind of like we have a problem, like we have cancer, and so we get a treatment for the problem, chemotherapy or something, and then we have a side effects from the treatment, and so then we need an antidote for the side effects, and then we get problems with the antidote, so then we need an antidote for the antidote. And you know, it's kind of like that. It feels to me, it's like, you know, we're in Zen or something, and that's really good at pulling the rug out from under certain things, and then suddenly it starts to create some new rugs. And so, you know, then we run into Toni Packer and she pulls those rugs out, and then we start to get some new rugs.
Yeah.
And then we run into Tony Parsons and he pulls those rugs out, and then we start to get some new rugs. And then, you know, it's like, it's kind of like it's constantly just pulling out from under us any place where we try to kind of land and concretize and get a grip on everything.
Yeah. Yet we've always been okay, and we always will. Now, I don't mean the person.
Yeah, no, I know.
That life force, you know, is eternal. It can't be, you know, it can't be found, can't be got rid of. Wow, it's just, wow, you know, yeah.
Yeah, whatever this is, it's always right here. It's always here. It's always, and it's always complete. It's always what it is, you know. And even when the things that are never really things, the forms that are never really form into anything, even when they get crushed and smashed and everything else, that too is just, it's just a different shape. It's not really a problem. I mean, it might hurt, but you know, the suffering is taking it personally, you know, like,
Yeah.
like I'm losing my mind, and my identity is being, you know, really smart and brilliant, and now suddenly I'm losing my mind. So, you know, that's the suffering. But just losing your mind is just whatever it is, you know. similarly, with getting some, health problem, like, it's like my identity is, I can't do what I did before or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just is the way it is. But we can make it a problem by like, it shouldn't be this way.
Well, Joan, I'm glad you came this way anyway and had the chat with us.
Oh, it's been wonderful talking with you. I've really enjoyed it. And I'm really happy to meet you. And I love the title, by the way, The Discarded Compass. I think that's a great title.
Thank you. It was going to be a book, actually. And I just thought, I just ended up doing a podcast because I was doing some other sort of a podcast. And I thought, yeah, why don't you name it? Oh, yeah, okay, name it that. You never know, a book might come along. But yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I think hearing things, I find that I often prefer, I'm speaking as a writer now, undermining my books, but but I often prefer, just hearing somebody talking or something than reading, because somehow it goes in a different way, I think.
Yeah, there's something in it, isn't there? Really,
Yeah.
We take it in better.
Yeah.
You have a website, haven't you? And you do meetings and such, and your books. You have a lot of books written too.
I have 5 books, and I have a website. I do individual meetings. I'm going to start, I think, doing group Zooms if I can figure out how to do it on Zoom.
Great.
And I have a newsletter if people want to sign up on my website for that. And basically, you can find out about, I have Facebook pages where I put new writing. And but anyway, people can find out about all of it really on my website, which is just www.joantollifson.com.
Great. And they can get all these, they can register there for the newsletter, and your books are for sale on Amazon, I presume. Would they be?
Yeah, they're all, you can get them all on Amazon, and I think you can get them all on Barnes and Noble online too.
Great.
Anyway, they're out there. Yeah.
So, Joan, thanks again, and mind yourself, and I hope everything goes well.
Thank you, and you too, John, and I hope everything goes well.
Thank you. Joan, wonderful. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye.
Take care.